It's Tuesday, November 4th here in Seoul. I'm Hwang Ji-hye filling in for Laah Hyun-kyung. Thanks for tuning in. And these are the stories we're following. At this hour, Hyundai and Kia are slapped with a massive fine in the United States for overstating fuel economy claims on more than 1 million cars sold there. President Park Geun-hye calls for a transformation of the country's education system as a means to achieving sustainable growth through innovation and creativity. And polls show that the races in the U.S. midterm elections are going to be tight, with voters widely divided over what they want from their government in President Obama's final 2 years in office. We begin with Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors, which have been hit with a large fine in the United States. They've agreed to pay $100 million in fines and forfeit $200 million worth of carbon credits for misleading customers about the fuel economy of many of their cars sold in the U.S. Shin Se-min reports.
Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors have been hit with a record fine of a combined $350 million in United States for overstating fuel economy standards on more than 1 million automobiles. That was the settlement reached on Monday between the Korean auto group and U.S. authorities. The fine itself amounts to $100 million. Under the terms, Hyundai and Kia will also forfeit greenhouse gas emission credits worth over $200 million and spend another $50 million on measures to prevent violations in the future. The penalty is the largest ever issued under the Clean Air Act. David Zuchowski, the president and chief executive officer of Hyundai Motor America, said in a statement that his company had acted transparently, reimbursed affected customers, and fully cooperated with the investigation, and that the company was pleased to put the issue behind them. Hyundai and Kia conceded in 2012 that they had overstated fuel efficiency standards by between 1 to 6 miles per gallon over the previous 2 years on automobiles sold in the U.S. They agreed at the time to compensate drivers of the affected automobiles by issuing debit cards. That admission came after the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency investigated more than a dozen Hyundai and Kia models for fuel efficiency discrepancies in response to consumer complaints. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
And Korea is expected to post its largest ever trade surplus for all of this year on the back of falling global oil prices. The Trade Ministry says the cumulative surplus in the January to October period stood at $36.7 billion. That's more than $1 billion higher than the same period last year. Korea posted a record yearly surplus of $44.1 billion in 2013. The Korea Center for International Finance says that global oil prices have fallen by around 25% over the last 4 months alone. And it's not just oil prices, but raw materials in general that have been dropping like a stone in recent months as concerns mount over an economic slowdown in major economies. The Korea Center for International Finance says that prices of gold also dropped 2.6% as of the end of last month from a year earlier, while that of corn went down more than 10%. Analysts attribute the fall to a lack of demand in the world market compared to excessive supply. They say prices will remain low for the time being. And deregulation is a key part of the President Park Geun-hye administration's plan to boost the domestic economy. And as part of such efforts, the Korean government is easing restrictions within its free economic zones to make them more attractive for investment. Kim Ji-yeon has the details.
The Korean government is easing regulations on its 8 free economic zones to increase the number of developers and thereby make it less of a pain for businesses to invest there. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy says it will lower the minimum requirement of developmental areas from the previous 330 to 200 square meters. The move will also give investors a higher rate of return, as the minimum reinvestment rate is being lowered from 25% to 10% of the profits generated from operating within the zones. Given the benefits, the move is expected to boost the number of private investors, as landowners and their associations will now be able to participate as developers of the zones. The ministry says it plans to raise $20 billion worth of economic benefit from the zones over the next 10 years. There are currently 88 districts within the 8 free economic zones in Korea. A zone in Chungbuk and the East Coast Free Economic Zone were added to the list last year as part of efforts to revive the local economy. But despite a number of measures introduced over the years, more than 40% of the districts are currently undeveloped due to low participation. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
And Korea's consumer prices rebounded for the first time in 4 months in October, but the inflation rate remained in the 1% range where it's been now for 2 years. Statistics Korea says prices grew 1.2% last month from the previous year. That falls well below the central bank's inflation target band of 2.5% to 3.5%. The agency attributes the slow growth to the falling prices of farming goods and crude oil. And today, a special event took place here in Seoul, where education experts from around the world gathered to discuss ways to improve global education. President Park Geun-hye was there, and she talked about fostering creative talents for her envisioned creative economy. Choi Yoo-sun reports.
The zeal of Korean parents for their children's education is renowned. And it would be fair to say that this fervor and the rapid development of education in Korea have largely contributed to helping the country rise from the ashes in a matter of just decades. But President Park Geun-hye, at a symposium co-organized by Seoul and the World Bank on Tuesday, said the time has come for the Korean education system to transform in the face of new challenges in the 21st century. The president referred to her talks with World Bank President Jim Yong-kim last year, when they agreed that innovation and creativity were the foundations of sustainable growth, and that it's education that can foster such creative talents at the center of a creative economy.
저는 우리 교육이 혁신을 이루어낼 창의적인 아이디어와 도전 정신을 키워내는 원천이 되어야 한다고 생각합니다. 개개인의 잠재된 능력을 최대한 끌어올려서 아이디어와 열정으로 가득한 융합 인재를 길러내는 창의 인재 양성 교육으로 변해야 합니다.
Korea recently participated in the UN Global Education First initiative and joined the Global Partnership for Education, evidence that the government wants to play a more active role in international efforts to enhance the quality of education in the developing world.
그동안 축적해온 교육의 노하우에 선진국의 우수 사례를 접목하고 이제까지의 교육 패러다임을 뛰어넘는 행복교육, 창의교육을 실현해서 우리 교육의 발전은 물론 세계 교육의 발전에도 기여해 나가기를 기대하고 있습니다.
Promoting Korea's hosting of the World Education Forum next May, President Park expressed hope that the participants will have meaningful discussions on making happy and creative education possible for the future generations. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
Now, over at the International Telecommunication Union's meeting that comes to a close in Korea's port city of Busan in just 3 days. Taking the lead of the host country, the ITU has adopted an agenda on promoting the Internet of Things. Song Ji-sun reports.
The International Telecommunications Union, for the first time, adopted an agenda regarding the Internet of Things, which is proposed by this year's host, South Korea. IoT refers to the connection of devices and objects through the Internet, and Seoul had proposed that it be facilitated to prepare for the future. Less than 1% of these objects are currently connected to the Internet, but that number is expected to jump 10 times on the back of cloud computing and big data technologies, with the market size expanding by 5 times its current level to over $8 trillion by the year 2020. While the IoT stands to open new business opportunities for startups, supporting developing countries in their pursuit of the IoT remains a challenge for the ITU, as the resources in those nations are limited. According to the IoT index filed by the International Data Corporation last year, South Korea is the second most prepared country among G20 members after the United States, and with the latest adoption of its agenda, Seoul aims to expand its presence in setting global standards and supporting developing nations in IoT-related projects of ITU. Seoul's ICT Ministry has also designated IoT Week Korea 2014 from Wednesday to next Friday, where solutions and products related to IoT will be presented at multiple events at COEX and other locations around the capital and Busan. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
Moving on to some international news, one of Japan's best-known writers has taken his own country to task for denying responsibility for the atrocities carried out by the Japanese military during wartime. He also provided insights into where the thinking may originate. Kim Min-ji has more.
Japanese writer Haruki Murakami has condemned his country for trying to evade responsibility for its wartime atrocities. In an interview with Japan's Mainichi Shimbun, Murakami noted that next year marks the 70th year since the end of World War II, but that Tokyo continues to miss the point that it was the assailant. Citing the Japanese way of thinking in regards to the war, the writer says that the Japanese believed they were the victims and that the emperor was exploited and its citizens deceived. Murakami added that eventually it was concluded that no one was wrong and that he understood why China and Korea feel resentment towards Japan today. Murakami says he saw similarities in the 2011 Fukushima Daiichi nuclear accident. He said that Japan did not look into who was really responsible and instead placed the blame on the earthquake and tsunami, believing they were all victims. Murakami, one of Japan's best-known authors and a longtime candidate for the Nobel Prize in Literature, is famous for bestsellers including Norwegian Wood and the 1Q84 trilogy. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
And a chunk of government posts are up for grabs on the midterm elections in the U.S., 1/3 of the Senate seats and all of the House seats. And many see the election as a referendum on President Barack Obama. Connie Lee reports.
Voters in the U.S. are gearing up to cast their ballots in the midterm elections on Tuesday. It's an election seen as a poll on President Barack Obama.
These midterm elections are an up or down vote on President Obama in terms of his stewardship of the economy, what's going on in foreign policy, and also his overall popularity.
Many races are tight or too close to call, but recent polls have been forecasting Republican gains, with many showing them taking charge of both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Voters will be electing candidates for all 435 seats in the House and 36 seats in the Senate. If Republicans hold on to their current seats and add 6 more in the House, they will hold a majority and make it a tough final 2 years for the Obama administration. On the issue of the economy, a Pew Research Center poll shows more voters believe the Republicans would do a better job than President Obama.
I don't think he's done a good job for what he said, and I don't think he was ever going to do a good job.
But there are others who think the president has a decent record.
I love him. He's doing all right. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
President Obama, supporting Democratic candidates at a rally in Illinois, reminded voters of his administration's achievements.
Over the past 4.5 years, our businesses have created more than 10 million new jobs. Housing market that was reeling is now rebounding. Auto industry that was wheezing is now roaring back.
The Ebola crisis and America's involvement in the fight against Islamic State are also factors likely to affect this year's midterms. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Staying in the United States, that has tightened security screening for travelers from countries under the U.S. visa waiver program in a bid to prevent foreign fighters from Syria and Iraq entering the country. U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security Jay Johnson says people from countries under the waiver program will have to provide additional information on an electronic application before they are allowed into the country. The move is in response to security security threats from foreign fighters holding Western passports, which enables them to travel with relative ease to Europe and the U.S. There are almost 40 European and Asian countries under the U.S. visa waiver program, including Korea. Shifting gears, Korea is the 25th best country to live in, at least according to a British think tank. Its latest index notes Korea's economy and education, but says they would be well served to learn from countries like Norway and Switzerland in other areas. Kwon So-ah has this story.
South Korea is the 25th most prosperous country out of 142 countries around the world, according to a Prosperity Index report released by the British-based Legatum Institute. This year's ranking is a notch higher than last year. Korea's best ranking was 24th in 2011. Norway topped the list for the 6th consecutive year. It was followed by Switzerland and New Zealand. The three most prosperous Asian countries are Singapore, Japan, and Hong Kong. The report says South Korea is the 5th best Asian country to live in. African nations filled out the majority of the bottom spots, with the Central African Republic propping up the rest. While GDP is usually the most common way to assess a country's prosperity level, the Legatum report says its definition of prosperity is more than, quote, just the accumulation of material wealth. That's why the institute measures countries by 8 categories. Korea performs strongly in economy and education, ranking 9th and 15th respectively. But the personal freedom and social capital divisions are weak.
Korea remains stuck in the mid-20 level because of its overall welfare situation. In terms of welfare systems, Korea is still an awfully long way behind countries like Norway and Switzerland, which are famous for their comprehensive welfare systems.
But analysts have expressed optimism that the government's latest efforts to improve its welfare policies could boost Korea's position on the Prosperity Index list in the coming years. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
And here in Korea, the number of one-person households have been on the rise in recent years as an increasing number of young people choose to delay or even completely forego marriage. This relatively new demographic has sparked off a so-called solo economy and a wave of new consumer trends. Park Ji-won reports.
Single-person households now make up more than 25% of Korea's total households. Statistics Korea says the ratio will increase to 1 in 3 by 2035. The rising number of singles in the country has begun to make an impression on the economy, and their distinct lifestyle is changing the landscape of the consumer market. For example, home appliance companies have been keen to cater to their special needs, rolling out products like mini rice cookers and small-load washing machines to slimmer refrigerators. The businesses say solo dwellers prefer appliances that are well-equipped with multi-functions in refined and compact designs. Increased revenues for convenience stores is another indication of the growing presence of single-person households. Recent statistics by the Bank of Korea show the amount of credit card transactions from January to July at convenience stores this year has increased about 15% from the same period last year, while large chain retailers saw a decrease, largely due to a slump in consumer spending after the April Fair disaster. Analysts say an increase in sales for convenience stores is closely linked to the purchasing habits of single people. The purchasing power of solo dwellers has turned out to be stronger than that of 3 to 4 member households, according to the Korea Chamber of Commerce and Industry. As the country's population of single people continues to grow, so has demand for single-person housing units and personal finance managers to help them prepare for their senior years alone. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
A A massive Buddha painting has recently been unveiled to the public here in Korea, and our Im Yooni joins us for a look at the rare exhibition. Welcome, Yooni, to the studio.
Thank you for having me. So it's being shown at the National Museum of Korea, and this is the 9th edition to their Gaebul series, which is also the large Buddha scroll paintings. And so people who come across them will say that they're very large and surprised at the size, so take a look.
Standing at more than 1,300 meters tall, roughly the height of a 5-story building, centuries ago this painting once served as a focus of worship for outdoor Buddhist rituals. The Gaebul is a hanging scroll of the Buddha, and this large and ancient version is originally from the Gaeamsa Temple, located at Mount Nunga in the province of Jeollanam-do. It's a rare sight for a Gaebul of this size to be shown to the public.
If you look at the history of the Gaeamsa Temple until its chief Buddhist monk in 1941, you'll see no other previous records of such large hanging scrolls.
Records show that until the 19th century, this Gaebul was actively being used by monks in religious rituals. And now the towering painting is designated as National Treasure number 1269 and treated as a priceless historical artifact that will be preserved for generations to come.
Wow, that's a huge artwork, Yooni. I'm pretty sure that many people would have been contributed to actually painting this.
Right, so like you heard in the report, it's 5 stories tall, so
Wow.
huge, so you can imagine how many materials are required to put it together. But records say that 13 artists were put together to paint this, and they used supplies donated by other fellow monks, and they were all led by an 18th century monk painter, Uigyom, and so he led the whole project and put this particular work together.
I see. And at the National Museum of Korea, where this art piece is being shown, there should be other Buddhist paintings as well, are there?
Right. So I also said that it's the 9th edition to the series, so there's more to come as expected. But really with this, any of these paintings are very rare because you saw how large they are. It's very difficult to put them up. So this sighting is a very unique chance to see this beautiful Buddha painting.
So it's a rare painting that we can rarely see. So we can only see them in special occasions, right?
Right, such as Buddha's birthday. A lot of times temples will put them up to mark Buddha's birthday, so you can catch them around the country. But it's estimated that there are about 100 of them left in the country, ancient ones left in the country, dating to the 17th and 19th century. And so right around Buddha's birthday, you can catch a few of them, or you can check it out at the museum.
I should definitely check them out. Thank you for doing the report, Yooni.
My pleasure.
Good afternoon. We had another cold morning, but the cold snap has eased as temperatures were on the rise, and it has reached into the upper teens in many regions right now. And lots of sun has been shining down on us, and it will remain sunny all day long, but a dry weather advisory remains in effect here in the capital, so be sure to stay hydrated and apply a good amount of moisturizer to your skin. Also be extra cautious when handling fire. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the daytime highs in the capital, Daegu, Gwangju, and Busan will be all climbing into 18 this afternoon under lots of sunshine. Now, on to other regions. Jeju Island and Daejeon will get up to 16 later on, and Dokdo will see a high of 15 later this afternoon. And it seems like late autumn weather will persist for the remainder of the week with a fair amount of sunshine. Well, that's all I have for you today. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.
And thanks, Michelle. That wraps up our newscast. I'll be back at 4 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.